The mining ship Lucky Star drifted through the dark space between planets. Inside the small cargo vessel, Tommy Wilson was eating his breakfast when the ship's warning system started making noise. Red lights flashed on the control panel, and a loud beeping sound filled the small bridge. His partner, Amy Chen, rushed to check the sensors. Her face went pale as she read the numbers on the screen. "Tommy, we need to leave, right now." Tommy looked at the sensor readings over her shoulder. Something huge was moving toward them. The computer said it was alive, and it was bigger than their entire ship. Much bigger. "What is that thing?" Tommy asked, watching the blinking dot on the screen get closer. Amy's hands shook as she pulled up the galactic database. After a few seconds, a file appeared on screen. The picture showed a massive creature with black scales, 6 arms that ended in sharp claws, and eyes that glowed red like fire. The words, "extremely dangerous," flashed in big letters across the image. "That's the Devourer," Amy whispered. "It destroyed 3 space colonies last year. Everyone who sees it dies." Tommy stared at the picture, then looked back at the sensor screen. The creature was still coming their way, but it wasn't moving very fast. It seemed to be floating more than hunting. "Look at the movement pattern," Tommy said, pointing at the screen. "It's not attacking, it's just drifting." Amy grabbed his arm. "Tommy, this thing has killed thousands of people. We need to run." But Tommy was already walking toward the ship's communication system. He had always been the kind of person who helped hurt animals back on Earth. Once, he spent 3 days caring for an injured wolf that everyone else was afraid to go near. The wolf became gentle once it realized Tommy wasn't going to hurt it. "What if it's not a monster?" Tommy said, turning on the radio. "What if it's just scared and alone?" "Are you crazy?" Amy shouted. "That thing could eat our ship." Tommy ignored her and spoke into the microphone. "Hello there, big guy. Can you hear me?" The creature stopped moving. On the sensor screen, Amy watched as the huge life form turned toward their ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the creature's movement pattern changed. Instead of the random drifting from before, it was now moving in a straight line toward them. "It heard you," Amy said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tommy, it's coming right at us." Through the ship's front window, they could see the creature now. It was even more frightening in person than in the pictures. The Devourer was as long as a city block, with armor-like scales that reflected the light from nearby stars. Its 6 arms moved slowly through space, and its red eyes were fixed on their small ship. Most people would have started shooting or tried to escape. Tommy did something different. He opened the cargo bay doors. "What are you doing?" Amy screamed. "Showing it we're not afraid," Tommy replied, "and that we're not going to hurt it." The creature came closer, moving carefully now. When it was close enough to touch their ship, it stopped. One of its massive arms reached out, but instead of crushing the Lucky Star, it gently touched the hull. The touch was so gentle that Tommy and Amy barely felt it. Tommy spoke into the radio again. "Hey there, you seem lonely out here. Want some company?" What happened next shocked Amy completely. The creature made a sound that came through their radio speakers. It wasn't a roar or a scream like she expected. It was more like a whale song, deep and sad and beautiful. "I think it's trying to talk to us," Tommy said, smiling for the first time since they spotted the creature. Over the next hour, Tommy tried different things to communicate. He played music from their ship's computer. He showed pictures of Earth through the ship's external screens. He even told stories about his home, speaking into the radio as if the creature could understand every word. And somehow, it seemed like the creature did understand. When Tommy played classical music, the creature's glowing eyes pulsed in rhythm with the song. When he showed pictures of Earth's oceans, the creature moved its arms in flowing motions that looked almost like swimming. "This is impossible," Amy muttered, watching the sensor readings. "Its stress levels are dropping. It's calming down." The creature had wrapped its arms around their ship now, but not in a threatening way. It reminded Tommy of how a cat might curl up next to someone it trusted. The massive beast was holding their ship gently, like it was afraid they might leave. "I think it's been alone for a long time," Tommy said softly. "Look how it's acting, just like a lost pet." Amy stared at him. "Pet? Tommy, that's not a pet. That's a creature that could destroy planets." "So were wolves until humans decided to make them into dogs," Tommy replied. "Everything seems scary when it's alone and misunderstood." The creature made another sound, softer this time. It sounded almost like purring. Tommy reached over to the ship's external lights and flashed them in a pattern. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. It was an old Earth signal that meant, "Hello." The creature's eyes flashed back in the same pattern. Amy sat down hard in her chair. "It learned that signal just from watching you do it once." "Smart guy, aren't you?" Tommy said to the creature. "I bet you understand more than anyone realizes." As if responding to his words, the creature gently released their ship and moved back a little. Then it did something that made both humans gasp. It arranged its 6 arms in a shape that looked almost like it was waving. "Did it just wave at us?" Amy asked. Tommy was already making plans. "Amy, we need to take it home." "Home?" "Tommy, we can't bring this thing to Earth. The government would never allow it. The alien councils would go crazy." "Then we'll figure something out," Tommy said, looking at the gentle giant floating beside their ship. "I'm not leaving it alone out here. Look at it, Amy. It's not a monster. It's just lost." The creature seemed to sense they were talking about it. It moved closer to their ship again and made soft, musical sounds that somehow felt like gratitude. Tommy smiled and patted the wall of the ship, knowing the creature could probably feel the vibration. "Don't worry, big guy. We'll figure this out together." In the distance, neither Tommy nor Amy noticed the small probe that had been watching them for the past hour. The probe belonged to the Galactic Council, and it had recorded everything that just happened. Back on the Council's space station, alarms were ringing. The humans had done something impossible again. They had made friends with the most dangerous creature in the galaxy, and they were bringing it home. The emergency meeting on Space Station Unity had been going for 6 hours. Representatives from 20 different alien species filled the large conference room, all talking at once. The noise was terrible, clicking sounds from the bug-like Thrix, musical whistles from the bird people of Vel Prime, and angry growling from the warrior race called the Corvin. Ambassador Rin of the Thrix clicked his 4 arms together to get everyone's attention. "The humans have lost their minds completely this time," he announced to the room. "They are traveling through space with the Devourer, the same creature that destroyed Colony 7 and killed 50,000 beings." The Corvin representative, a large creature covered in gray fur, slammed his fist on the table. "We should destroy the human ship before it reaches their homeworld. This is too dangerous to allow." "Wait," said Elder Scylla of the peaceful Vel people. Her blue feathers ruffled with worry. "Our sensors show something strange. The Devourer is not attacking the human ship. They appear to be traveling together." A new voice spoke up from the back of the room. Dr. Kex, the Council's expert on dangerous life forms, walked forward with a data pad in his tentacles. "I have been studying the sensor readings for the past day. What we are seeing should not be possible." He pressed a button, and a large screen showed video from the space probe that had been watching Tommy and Amy. The room fell silent as they watched the Devourer gently touch the human ship, listen to music, and even wave at the humans. "This creature has never shown peaceful behavior before," Dr. Kex continued. "It has been alone for over 300 years, destroying everything it encounters. But with these humans, it is acting like a companion animal." The room exploded with angry voices again. The idea that the galaxy's most feared monster could become someone's pet was too strange for most of them to accept. Meanwhile, aboard the Lucky Star, Tommy was having his own problems. The creature, which he had started calling Fluffy much, to Amy's horror, was too big to fit inside their ship. So Tommy had figured out how to extend their cargo bay's life support field to create a bubble of air around Fluffy. It worked, but barely. "This is not going to work long-term," Amy said, checking the power readings on her screen. "Keeping that force field running is using up all our energy." Tommy was in the cargo bay, floating in his spacesuit next to Fluffy's massive head. The creature had learned to be very gentle, moving its huge arms slowly so it wouldn't accidentally hurt the tiny humans. "Look at this, Amy," Tommy called over the radio. He held up a metal ball from their emergency supplies. "Watch what Fluffy does." Tommy tossed the ball gently toward one of Fluffy's arms. The creature caught it carefully and tossed it back, being very careful not to throw it too hard. They had been playing this simple game for an hour. "It understands games," Amy said, amazed, despite herself. "It's actually playing fetch." "Not just playing," Tommy replied. "Learning. Yesterday, I taught Fluffy how to be more gentle by showing it how I pet my cat back on Earth. Watch this." Tommy floated closer to Fluffy's head and gently stroked one of the creature's scales. Fluffy made a deep, rumbling sound that vibrated through Tommy's suit. It was the sound of contentment. "It's purring," Amy whispered. The creature had learned many things during their journey. It learned that humans were fragile and needed to be treated gently. It learned that certain sounds meant happiness and others meant worry. Most importantly, it learned that Tommy and Amy cared about its feelings. When Tommy played sad music, Fluffy's eyes would dim with sympathy. When he played happy songs, the creature's scales would shimmer with brighter colors. Fluffy was not just smart. It was emotional in ways that surprised both humans. Their peaceful journey was interrupted when Amy's sensors detected other ships approaching. 5 vessels were moving toward them at high speed, and they were not friendly. "Tommy, get back in here," Amy called over the radio. "We have company, and they have weapons powered up." The Corvin attack fleet had decided not to wait for the Council's official decision. Their leader, Commander Grax, believed the only way to handle the Devourer was to destroy it before it could cause more damage. "Human vessel," came a growling voice over their radio. "Move away from the creature immediately. We are going to destroy it." Tommy was back on the bridge now, but he could see Fluffy through the cargo bay cameras. The creature sensed the approaching danger and was becoming agitated. Its eyes were glowing brighter, and its arms were moving in what Tommy recognized as defensive positions. "You can't hurt Fluffy," Tommy replied over the radio. "It's done nothing wrong." "Fluffy?" Commander Grax's voice was full of disbelief. "You named the Devourer. Fluffy?" "That's right," Tommy said firmly, "and Fluffy is under human protection now." The Corvin ships moved closer, their weapons charging with energy that made space around them glow red. But as they approached, something unexpected happened. Fluffy moved. The massive creature positioned itself between the Lucky Star and the attacking ships, its 6 arms spread wide, creating a shield around the small human vessel. Fluffy was protecting Tommy and Amy, even though the Corvin ships had weapons that could seriously hurt it. "The creature is defending the humans," one of the Corvin pilots reported to Commander Grax. "It is using its body as a shield." This was not what Grax had expected. The Devourer was supposed to be a mindless killer, not a protective guardian. He hesitated, unsure what to do next. That hesitation gave Fluffy time to do something that shocked everyone watching. The creature began to sing. It was the same whale-like song it had made when Tommy first spoke to it, but louder and more complex. The song traveled through space, reaching not just the Corvin ships but also the space station where the Council was still meeting. Dr. Kex was the first to understand what they were hearing. "These are not random sounds," he announced to the Council. "This is language. The creature is trying to communicate." The song lasted for 10 minutes. When it ended, Fluffy slowly moved its arms in the waving gesture it had learned from Tommy. It was saying hello to the Corvin ships. Commander Grax stared at his instruments in confusion. The creature waved at us? On the Lucky Star, Tommy was smiling. Good job, Fluffy. Show them you're friendly. But the Corvin commander was not convinced. Tricks and games will not change what this monster has done. Prepare to fire. That's when Fluffy did something that changed everything. Instead of attacking or running away, the creature began to move slowly toward the Corvin ships. Its arms were spread wide, but not in a threatening way. It looked like Fluffy was trying to give the warships a hug. What is it doing? One of the Corvin pilots asked nervously. Tommy understood immediately. Fluffy thinks you're upset and wants to comfort you. That's what it does when Amy or I are worried about something. The idea that the Devourer was trying to comfort them was so strange that Commander Grax didn't know how to react. His warriors were trained to fight monsters, not deal with giant space creatures that wanted to be friends, while everyone was trying. To figure out what to do next, more ships arrived. The Council had sent their own fleet, led by Ambassador Rin. Now 3 different groups were facing each other in space, with Fluffy floating peacefully in the middle, still trying to make friends. With everyone. This situation is getting complicated, Amy said to Tommy. Tommy looked at Fluffy on the camera screen. The creature was looking back and forth between all the ships, like it was trying to understand why everyone seemed angry. Don't worry, buddy, Tommy said softly. We'll figure this out. Director Patricia Wong sat in her office on Earth's main space station, staring at the strangest request she had ever received. On her desk was a formal application to bring an alien life form to Earth. The creature's official name was the Devourer of Colony 7. Its unofficial name, written in Tommy Wilson's handwriting, was Fluffy, Friendly Space Pet. Her assistant, Mark Stevens, knocked on her door. Ma'am, the President is on line 1. The Secretary of Defense is on line 2. The Head of Alien Relations is on line 3. And there are about 50 news reporters trying to get into the building. Patricia rubbed her tired eyes. What does our legal team say about this? Well, Mark said, looking at his notes, according to Earth law, there's nothing that specifically prevents someone from adopting an alien creature. The pet import rules say we need health records and proof the animal won't hurt anyone. And do we have health records for a creature that eats spaceships? Tommy Wilson submitted a report from their ship's medical scanner. Apparently, Fluffy is in perfect health and shows no signs of disease. Patricia looked out her office window at the stars. Somewhere out there, a mining ship was traveling toward Earth with the galaxy's most feared monster riding alongside it like a loyal dog. The situation was impossible, but somehow it was really happening. What about the part where it won't hurt anyone? She asked. Mark flipped through more papers. That's the interesting part. Wilson included video recordings of his interactions with the creature. It's been 7 days now, and the thing hasn't shown any aggressive behavior. In fact, it seems to be protective of Wilson and his partner. The phone rang again. Patricia ignored it. She had been ignoring calls from alien governments all morning. The Corvin Empire wanted permission to enter Earth space with warships to destroy the creature. The Thrix Collective was threatening to cut off trade with humanity if they allowed the Devourer to reach Earth. The peaceful Vel Federation was the only ones supporting the humans, saying that taming the creature proved humans were wise and kind. Get me a video call with Wilson, Patricia said finally. A few minutes later, Tommy Wilson's face appeared on her office screen. He looked tired but happy. Behind him, she could see part of what looked like a massive black wall covered in scales. Mr. Wilson, Patricia said, do you understand what you're asking me to do? I'm asking you to let me bring my friend home, Tommy replied simply. Your friend has killed thousands of people. Tommy's expression became sad. I know. And I think Fluffy knows too. That's part of why it's been so lonely and angry. It didn't understand that it was hurting people. No one ever tried to communicate with it before, as if responding to its name. The massive wall behind Tommy moved. A huge eye, glowing softly red, appeared in the camera's view. The eye looked directly at Patricia through the screen. Patricia had expected to feel fear when she saw the devourer up close. Instead, she felt something else entirely. The creature's eye looked sad and hopeful at the same time. It reminded her of the way her childhood dog used to look at her when it wanted something. "Hello, Fluffy," she said, feeling silly, but somehow compelled to be polite. The creature made a soft rumbling sound. Tommy smiled and translated. Fluffy says hello back. It can recognize human faces now and remembers voices. "This is insane," Patricia muttered. "Maybe," Tommy agreed. "But sometimes the best things in life are a little insane. Fluffy just needs someone to care about it. It's been alone in space for hundreds of years." Patricia made her decision. "Mr. Wilson, I'm going to allow you to bring your pet to Earth. But there will be conditions." Tommy's face lit up with joy. "Anything. What do you need?" "First, the creature will have to live in a special habitat away from populated areas. We're thinking about the moon, or maybe one of the space stations." "That's fine. Fluffy likes space anyway." "Second, you'll need to work with our scientists to study the creature and understand its capabilities." "Fluffy would like that. It enjoys learning new things." "And third," Patricia said, her voice becoming serious, "if the creature shows any signs of reverting to its old behavior, we will have to reconsider this arrangement." Tommy nodded solemnly. "I understand. But that won't happen. Fluffy is happy. Now. Happy creatures don't hurt people." After ending the call, Patricia felt like she had just made either the best or worst decision of her career. She was about to find out which. The news that Earth was officially welcoming the Devourer spread across the galaxy within hours. The reaction was immediate and intense. On the Corvan homeworld, War Chief Bruton called for immediate action. "The humans have gone too far this time. They are harboring a known killer. We must act to protect the galaxy." But on the peaceful planet of Vel Prime, Elder Council member Tila had a different view. "The humans have accomplished something we thought impossible. They have turned hatred into love, fear into friendship. This is a lesson for all of us." The debate raged across dozens of worlds. Some species saw the humans as reckless and dangerous. Others saw them as wise and compassionate. A few species began to wonder if there were other monsters in the galaxy that might just need understanding instead of fear. Meanwhile, aboard the Lucky Star, Tommy was preparing Fluffy for the arrival at Earth. He showed the creature pictures of Earth's moon, where they would be living. He explained that there would be many humans who would want to meet Fluffy, and that some of them might be scared at first. "Just be patient with them," Tommy said, gently stroking one of Fluffy's scales. "They'll learn to love you like I do." Fluffy responded with its purring sound, which had become deeper and more musical over the past week. Amy had started recording the sounds, and she was amazed at how complex they were becoming. Fluffy was developing its own language. "Tommy," Amy called from the bridge, "we're getting a signal from Earth's moon base. They want to talk to us." The moon base commander, Colonel Richards, appeared on their screen. He looked nervous but determined. "Mr. Wilson, we've prepared a special habitat for your companion. It's a large enclosed space with life support systems designed for creatures of unusual size." "That sounds perfect," Tommy replied. "Fluffy doesn't need much. Just space to move around and company." "About that," Colonel Richards said. "We've had over 1,000 volunteers apply to work with the creature. Scientists, animal behaviorists, even some kids who want to help take care of it." Tommy grinned. "See that, Fluffy? You're going to have lots of new friends. The creature's Eyes brightened, and it made a happy warbling sound that both Tommy and Amy had learned meant excitement. But not everyone was excited about their arrival. As the lucky star approached Earth's solar system, it picked up signals from multiple alien fleets that had gathered near Jupiter. The Corvan Empire had convinced several other species to join them in demanding that Earth turn over the Devourer. "This is Commander Grax of the Corvan First Fleet," came a growling voice over their radio. "Human vessel, you are ordered to stop and surrender the creature immediately." Tommy looked at Amy, then at Fluffy, who was watching the conversation with intelligent eyes. "What do you think, buddy? Should we be worried?" Fluffy made a sound that Tommy had learned meant no. Then the creature did something new. It moved to the cargo bay's communication panel and began manipulating the controls with delicate touches of its massive claws. "What is it doing?" Amy asked. The answer came a moment later. Fluffy had figured out how to broadcast its own voice across all radio frequencies. The creature began to sing, but this time, the song was different. It was complex and beautiful, with layers of meaning that seemed to speak directly to the heart. Throughout the solar system, on Earth and the Moon and all the space stations, people stopped what they were doing to listen. Even the alien fleets fell silent as Fluffy's song filled the space around them. When the song ended, there was a long moment of silence. Then Colonel Richards's voice came over the radio, soft with wonder. "That was beautiful," he said. "Welcome home, Fluffy." The large meeting room on Luna Base had been specially built for this moment. Representatives from 30 different species sat around a circular table that could have fit a small spaceship. In the center of the room, protected by a clear energy barrier. Fluffy rested comfortably on a specially designed platform. The creature had grown even more impressive during its time on the moon. Its scales now shimmered with colors that changed based on its mood, and its 6 arms moved with graceful precision. Most surprising of all, Fluffy had learned to communicate using the base's computer systems, creating patterns of light and sound that could be translated into words. Dr. Sarah Kim, Earth's leading expert on alien life, stood at the front of the room with a datapad full of observations. She had spent 3 months studying Fluffy, and her findings were remarkable. "In all my years of studying alien species," she began, "I have never encountered a creature with such rapid learning abilities. In just 12 weeks, Fluffy has learned basic mathematics, understands complex emotional concepts, and has even started creating what can only be described as art." She pressed a button, and the room's screens showed images of beautiful patterns that Fluffy had made using colored lights. The patterns were intricate and moving, like visual music. Ambassador Rin of the Thrix clicked his arms together impatiently. "These tricks do not change the fact that this creature destroyed 3 colonies. How can we trust it?" Tommy Wilson, who had been living on the moon base with Fluffy, stood up to answer. "Because Fluffy has changed. But more than that, we've learned why those attacks happened in the first place." He nodded to Dr. Kim, who brought up a new display showing brain scans of Fluffy's head. The creature's species was not naturally violent. They were explorers and builders. But something happened to them long ago that changed their behavior. The scan showed areas of Fluffy's brain that were different from what they should have been. Dr. Kim explained that these differences were caused by a disease that had affected Fluffy's entire species hundreds of years ago. The disease made them confused and aggressive, unable to understand the difference between threats and friends. Fluffy was the last of its kind, Dr. Kim continued, wandering space alone while suffering from this condition. The attacks on colonies were not intentional violence. They were confused attempts to communicate. Eldermorth of the Quiet Ones, an ancient species that rarely spoke, stood up slowly. His voice was like wind through old trees. "We remember the builders of the void. They were the gardeners of space, creators of beauty among the stars. We thought they were all lost." The healing process began when Tommy showed Fluffy kindness, Dr. Kim explained. The emotional connection helped restore the damaged parts of its brain. Fluffy is now fully recovered from the disease that plagued its species. Commander Grax of the Corvan Empire slammed his fist on the table. Even if this is true, the creature is still too dangerous to be allowed freedom. It could change back at any time. That's when Fluffy itself decided to join the conversation. Lights began flashing in complex patterns around the room, and the translation computers turned the patterns into words that appeared on everyone's screens. "I remember now," Fluffy's translated voice said through the speakers. "I remember what my people were like before the sickness came. We built gardens in space where other species could live and grow. We sang the star songs that helped young civilizations learn to reach for the sky." The creature's words created a hush in the room. Many of the species present had old legends about mysterious helpers who had guided their ancestors in ancient times. Fluffy continued, "The sickness made me forget who I was. It made me afraid and angry. When I saw other beings, I did not see friends. I saw threats. Tommy helped me remember that I was meant to build, not destroy, to demonstrate." Fluffy began working with the room's computer systems. In minutes, it had created a beautiful holographic display showing plans for a space habitat that could support dozens of different species. The design was incredibly advanced, using technology that no single species had ever developed. "This is what my people did," Fluffy explained. "We helped others live together peacefully. I want to do this again." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the human representative, smiled as she looked at the plans. "Fluffy has already started building. The habitat where it lives on the moon has been expanded 3 times to accommodate all the beings who want to work with it." This was true. Word of the friendly creature had spread throughout the galaxy, and beings from many species had come to see Fluffy for themselves. Most left as friends. Scientists, artists, engineers, and even children had learned from the creature's unique perspective on life. "It's not just building structures," Tommy added. "Fluffy is building bridges between species that have never gotten along before. Last week, I saw a Corvan engineer and a Thrix artist working together on one of Fluffy's projects." Commander Grax looked uncomfortable at this mention of cooperation between traditional enemies. Ambassador Island of the Tentacled Ones spoke up. "My government has reviewed the proposals that Fluffy has submitted. The creature wants to establish peaceful meeting places throughout the galaxy where different species can work together safely. And it's not asking for anything in return," added Representative Tolan from the Crystal Beings. "Fluffy just wants to help others be happy and safe." The debate continued for hours. Some representatives remained suspicious, but many others were beginning to see the possibilities that Fluffy offered. The creature sat quietly through most of the discussion, occasionally creating beautiful light patterns that seemed to calm everyone in the room. Finally, Elder Morth spoke again. "There is an old saying among my people. The greatest monsters are those we create through fear and misunderstanding. This creature was never truly a monster. It was simply lost and in pain." He turned toward Fluffy, and his ancient voice became gentle. "Welcome back, Builder of the Void. We have missed your people's wisdom." Fluffy's response was a pattern of light so beautiful that several representatives gasped. The translation showed simple words. "Thank you for giving me a chance to remember who I am." The vote was close, but in the end, the Galactic Council officially recognized Fluffy as a peaceful being with the right to travel freely through space. More importantly, they approved Fluffy's plan to build the first interspecies cooperation station near Earth's moon. Commander Grax was one of the few who voted against the decision, but even he seemed less angry than before. As the meeting ended, he approached Tommy. "Human," the Corvan said gruffly, "I still think you are crazy. But perhaps the galaxy needs more crazy humans like you." Tommy grinned. "Thanks. I think that's the nicest thing a Corvan has ever said to a human." That evening, Tommy sat with Fluffy on the observation deck of the moon base, looking out at Earth through the large windows. The planet looked beautiful from space, blue and white and peaceful. "So what do you think, buddy?" Tommy asked. "Ready to start building your space station?" Fluffy's response was a warm, musical sound that needed no translation. It meant happiness, gratitude, and hope for the future. In the distance, construction ships from a dozen different species were already approaching the moon, ready to help. Fluffy began its greatest project yet. A place where any being in the galaxy could come to find friendship, understanding, and peace. The monster had become a builder. The destroyer had become a creator. And it all started because one human decided to see friendship instead of fear. 1 year later, the Interspecies Cooperation Station orbited Earth's moon like a giant flower made of metal and crystal. The station had grown far beyond anyone's original plans, with sections designed by and for dozens of different species. Some areas were filled with water for aquatic beings. Others had thick atmosphere for creatures that breathed different gases. And some sections existed in the vacuum of space for beings who preferred no atmosphere at all. Tommy Wilson walked through the central hub of the station, marveling at how much had changed. Aliens who had been enemies for centuries now worked, side by side on research projects. Children from different worlds played together in specially designed recreation areas. The station buzzed with the sounds of construction, conversation, and music from 100 different cultures. But the most remarkable change was in Fluffy itself. The creature had grown larger and more beautiful over the past year. Its scales now displayed complex patterns that seemed to tell stories, and its 6 arms could work on multiple projects simultaneously while still being gentle enough to hold a small child. Fluffy had become the heart of the station, mediating disputes, offering advice, and creating wonders that brought different species together. "Tommy?" called a familiar voice. Amy Chen approached, wearing the uniform of a diplomatic liaison. She had been promoted after her role in first contact with Fluffy and now served as the station's head of interspecies relations. "How's our big friend doing today?" she asked, gesturing toward the central area where Fluffy was working. Tommy smiled as he watched the massive creature delicately assembling what looked like a sculpture made of living light. Around Fluffy, a group of young beings from 6 different species watched in wonder, asking questions in a dozen languages that Fluffy somehow understood and answered. "Better than ever," Tommy replied. "This morning, Fluffy solved a 300-year-old dispute between the rock people and the gas clouds by designing a shared habitat that works for both species. This afternoon, it's teaching art class to kids." Amy shook her head in amazement. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. A year ago, everyone in the galaxy was terrified of the Devourer. Now parents from across the universe are sending their children here to learn from it." They walked closer to where Fluffy was working. The creature sensed their approach and turned one of its massive heads toward them. Its eyes, which once glowed with anger and confusion, now sparkled with joy and intelligence. "Hello, Tommy." "Hello, Amy," Fluffy said through the station's communication system. Its voice had become warm and musical, nothing like the whale songs it had made when they first met. "Would you like to see what the children and I are creating?" The sculpture was beautiful beyond words. It seemed to be made of captured starlight, flowing and dancing in patterns that told the story of different species learning to work together. At the center of the light sculpture was a small representation of the Lucky Star, the mining ship, where Tommy and Fluffy had first become friends. "It's wonderful," Amy said softly. "What inspired it?" "The children asked me to show them how friendship begins," Fluffy replied. "I told them about the day Tommy decided to trust me instead of fear me. They wanted to make art about that moment." A small Thrix child, no bigger than a house cat, chittered excitedly and pointed at the sculpture. Fluffy gently translated. "Little Pip says the sculpture shows that even scary things can become beautiful when they are understood." Tommy felt tears in his eyes. It seemed impossible that this gentle, wise creature was the same being that had once been called the most dangerous monster in the galaxy. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by an urgent beeping from Amy's communication device. "I'm sorry," she said, checking the message. "We have a situation developing in the outer system." The three of them made their way to the station's command center, where Director Wong was coordinating with ships throughout the solar system. Her face was serious as she looked up from her displays. "We have a problem," she announced. "Our deep space sensors have detected something big approaching from the outer rim. It's similar to Fluffy's energy signature, but much more chaotic." Fluffy's entire body went rigid with attention. "Show me," the creature requested. The main screen displayed sensor readings of a massive object moving through space toward Earth's solar system. It was roughly the same size as Fluffy, but moved in erratic patterns that suggested confusion and distress. "It's another one," Fluffy said quietly. "Another of my people still affected by the sickness." Tommy felt his heart sink. They had all hoped that Fluffy was the last of its kind, but apparently there was at least one more creature out there, still suffering from the disease that had turned the peaceful builders into feared monsters. "Can you communicate with it?" Director Wong asked. Fluffy was already reaching out through the station's long-range communication array. The creature began broadcasting the same healing songs that Tommy had first heard a year ago. But now they were more complex and filled with hope rather than sadness. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the approaching creature's movement pattern changed. Instead of the chaotic tumbling it had been doing, it began moving in a more purposeful direction, straight toward the station. "It heard me," Fluffy said with excitement. "It remembers the old songs." But it's still very sick and confused. Over the next several hours, ships from across the galaxy converged on Earth's solar system. But this time they weren't coming to fight. Word had spread about what Fluffy had become, and many species now understood that the creatures they had feared were actually victims who needed help, not enemies to be destroyed. The Corvan Empire sent medical ships. The Thrix Collective offered their best xenobiologists. Even species that had never worked together before joined the effort to help heal another lost builder. When the sick creature finally arrived, it was clear that it was in much worse condition than Fluffy had been. Its scales were dull and cracked, its movements were painful to watch, and its eyes glowed with the red fire of confusion and fear. But Fluffy was ready. The healthy creature moved out of the station and into space, approaching its suffering cousin with infinite patience and gentleness. Tommy watched through the station's cameras as Fluffy began the slow process of healing that had started with their own friendship. "It's going to take time," Dr. Kim explained to the assembled observers. "The healing process requires emotional connection and trust. We can provide medical support, but the real cure comes from friendship and understanding." Tommy suited up and took a small shuttle out to where the two creatures floated in space. He knew that his presence had been crucial to Fluffy's recovery, and he suspected this new creature would need the same kind of personal connection. As he approached the sick creature, he could see the fear in its glowing eyes. It was terrified and alone, just as Fluffy had been. "Hey there," Tommy said gently over his suit's radio. "I'm Tommy. I know you're scared and confused, but you're safe now. We're going to help you remember who you really are." The creature's response was a harsh, discordant sound, nothing like Fluffy's musical communications. But Tommy could hear the pain underneath the noise. "I know it hurts," he continued. "But look, you're not alone anymore. Fluffy is here, and so am I. We're going to take care of you." Slowly, carefully, Fluffy began to sing. The song was different from any Tommy had heard before. It was a lullaby, filled with memories of what the builders had been like before the sickness came. As the music flowed through space, the sick creature's harsh sounds began to soften. It took 3 days, but gradually the new creature began to calm down. Its eyes stopped glowing with angry red light and began to show the soft blue glow of peace. Its movements became more graceful, and its scales started to shimmer with healthy colors. On the fourth day, the creature spoke its first clear words. I remember the gardens we built among the stars. Tommy smiled as he floated between the two massive beings. Welcome back, he said. Would you like to see what Fluffy has been building? 6 months later, two builders worked together on the expanded cooperation station. The new creature, who had chosen the name Harmony, had proven to be just as creative and wise as Fluffy. Together, they had designed habitats for species that had never been able to coexist before, solved ancient conflicts through patient mediation, and created art that brought tears of joy to beings across the galaxy. Tommy sat in his favorite observation lounge, watching Earth rotate slowly below. The planet looked different now, surrounded by the ships and stations of 100 different species, all working together on projects inspired by the builders. Amy joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked. Tommy accepted the coffee gratefully. "I was just thinking about that first day when we met Fluffy. If we had run away like everyone expected us to, none of this would have happened." "The galaxy would have lost something precious," Amy agreed. 2 amazing beings would still be lost and alone, and all these species would still be afraid of each other. Through the large windows, they could see Fluffy and Harmony working on their latest project, a mobile habitat that could travel between star systems, carrying the message of cooperation to worlds that had never experienced peace with their neighbors. "Sometimes the most important thing you can do," Tommy said thoughtfully, "is simply decide to see a friend instead of an enemy." Fluffy's musical voice came through the room's speakers. "Tommy, Harmony and I are ready to test the new mobile station. Would you like to be our first passengers?" Tommy grinned and stood up. "Adventure calls. Ready for another impossible journey, Amy? With you two?" "Always." As they made their way toward the docking bay where their friends waited, Tommy reflected on how much the galaxy had changed. Fear had been replaced by curiosity. Suspicion had given way to cooperation. And 2 lonely monsters had become the greatest builders and peacekeepers the universe had ever known. The galaxy was no longer a dark and dangerous place. It had become something wonderful. A community of friends who had learned that even the most frightening differences could become beautiful connections when approached with an open heart. And it all started because one human decided to say hello to a creature that everyone else called a monster.